The galaxy had long since consigned humanity to the margins. To the elder civilizations, humans were a minor species, tenacious but frail, tolerated only because their ambitions were small and their reach limited. Their colonies clung to inhospitable worlds and fractured asteroids, scattered like embers against the cold void, flickering but never quite extinguished. That fragility was both their curse and their resilience, a truth Captain Alara Vey carried with her as the ardent horizon slipped into the shadow of a dying star. She stood at the viewport, her reflection etched against the crimson light bleeding from the swollen giant. Her features were lean, whether by years of service, eyes sharp with unspoken defiance. She had grown up on Clyros 4, a colony carved into rock and rust, where survival was bought daily through labor and sacrifice. Her father had always told her that humans survived not by strength, but by refusing to yield when stronger powers expected them to. Alara had believed him then, though belief had become harder to sustain in the face of centuries of galactic indifference. Still, the words had shaped her, and now, with every command she gave, she tried to live them. The ardent horizon was no sleek warship. It was patched together from salvage, its engines running on parts older than most of its crew, its hull scarred from encounters with pirates and storms alike. Yet Alara considered it more than machinery. It was a symbol, proof that even a vessel held together by willpower could endure where others faltered. Her crew mirrored the ship's nature, imperfect, stubborn, and bound together by loyalty stronger than any oath. Lieutenant Joran Malik, her second-in-command, embodied the pragmatism of a man who had seen too much. His wit was dry, his counsel cautious, and though he argued often, his loyalty to Alara never wavered. Navigator Sarimani was younger, her optimism almost disarming in its persistence. Where others saw ruin, she saw patterns, possibilities, wonder. Chief Engineer Reese Calder, grease-stained and blunt, carried a love for the ship that bordered on devotion. Every groan of its engines was personal to him. They were not heroes, not soldiers bred for glory, but ordinary humans thrust together by necessity, surviving through resilience and trust. Their mission was simple on paper. Survey the forgotten systems at the edge of the drift, update charts no one else cared to maintain. It was a thankless task, but such duties fell to ships like theirs. Weeks of monotony had dulled the crew's vigilance until the sensors whispered of something unexpected. A signature buried in the static, deliberate enough to demand attention. Curiosity was dangerous, but it was also the lifeblood of explorers. Against Malik's objections, Alara set a course. What they found silenced the bridge. Suspended against the star's fading glow was a vast station, alien in its design and utterly lifeless. Its form seemed less constructed than grown, its sweeping arches and latticework structures defying human aesthetics. No transmissions pulsed from it, no movement stirred. It was a carcass adrift, yet Alara felt an unease settle in her chest. Space held many ruins, but few whispered such quiet menace. "We should log the coordinates and leave," Malik advised, eyes narrowed on the readings. "We don't know what built it or what killed it." Sarah leaned forward, her voice alive with wonder. "This architecture doesn't match any known species. This could be a discovery that rewrites the archives. We can't just walk away." Reese snorted, shaking his head as he tapped at diagnostics. "Or maybe we can. Just because it's old doesn't mean it's safe. Dead things bite too." Alara listened, weighing each perspective. Malik's caution was sound, Sarah's hunger for discovery infectious, Reese's skepticism grounded. But beneath their words, something in her gut whispered that this was not coincidence. It was a calling. She made her decision. Boarding the station felt like stepping into a tomb. Their boots echoed in vast, silent corridors, the air stale but breathable. The walls pulsed faintly with residual power, as if the station clung desperately to life. Dust hung suspended in weightless motes, disturbed by their passage. The further they ventured, the louder the low hum grew, resonating through their bones like the heartbeat of something slumbering. They reached what resembled a controlled chamber, its consoles dormant, until Sarah coaxed a terminal awake. Symbols bloomed across the screens, intricate and unreadable. Sarah's eyes darted over them, her lips moving as she worked, translating fragments. The chamber brightened as the system adapted, casting their faces in shifting light. Then, slowly, the symbols gave way to images. Star systems appeared, mapped in stark detail. One by one, they were crossed out in red. Ilera felt her breath catch as she recognized some of them. Minor colonies, outposts, settlements. Erased. Gone. What does it mean? Reese asked, though dread already laced his voice. Sarah's whisper carried the weight of revelation. Consumption. Assimilation. These aren't random extinctions. Something feeds. The final image filled the screen. A swarm of constructs, endless and consuming, sweeping across systems like locusts across a field. They were not ships in the human sense, but living machinery, devouring everything in their path. Their trajectory curved inward, toward the heart of known space, toward humanity. The silence that followed was heavier than any words. Malik's jaw tightened, his voice low. No one will believe us. The council will call it fabrication or hysteria. They'll ignore it until it's too late. Ilera stared at the screen, her heart pounding. She thought of Clyros 4, of colonies already stretched thin, of families laboring against despair. No one else would fight for them. No one else would even try. The weight settled on her shoulders with crushing clarity. Then we'll make them believe, she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried a steel none could miss. If no one else will stand, we will. Humanity doesn't fade. Not now. Not ever. The terminal flickered and died. The warning delivered. The messenger spent. The crew exchanged glances heavy with fear. Yet something fiercer burned beneath it. Resolve. Back aboard the ardent horizon, the engines roared to life, tearing them away from the station and into the dark. Ilera did not know if they could win, but she knew this. The machines had chosen their prey poorly. Humanity might be fragile, but fragility had never meant weakness. In the fading light of the dying star, the ship vanished into the void, carrying a secret that would ignite a war and a flame that refused to be extinguished. This is Section 1, 1,000 words, introducing Ilera, her crew, the derelict station, and the central conflict with the machine swarm, ending with a vow that propels the story forward. Would you like me to reconstruct Section 2 in the same polished style, so all 4 sections feel seamlessly matched? The ardent horizon hurtled through the void, its patched hull trembling as though it sensed the burden of the truth it carried. On the bridge, silence pressed down on the crew, broken only by the hum of the engines and the soft rhythm of consoles. Every face reflected the same unspoken realization. What they had seen on the alien station was no anomaly, no relic of the past, but a harbinger of what was to come. The galaxy remained blissfully unaware, and only this single battered ship bore witness to the threat poised to engulf it. Ilera leaned forward in her chair, her hands gripping the armrests tightly. The images of those erased star systems seared themselves into her mind, each one a grave marker for civilizations devoured without trace. Her father's words echoed in her thoughts. Humans survive by refusing to yield, but survival against this foe would demand more than stubbornness. It would demand unity, a resource as scarce among her people as clean water on Clyros 4. Joran Malik broke the silence with his characteristic bluntness. We should transmit everything we've got straight to the Council archives. Send it wideband, scatter it through the networks. Let the evidence speak for itself before anyone can bury it. Ilera shook her head, her gaze hard. And what happens when they dismiss it as a fabrication? Or worse, label us agitators for spreading fear? The elder species already think of us as reckless children. Handing them this without proof of our credibility ensures they'll ignore it. Sarah, seated at the navigation console, spoke with a mixture of urgency and hope. But the data is real. If we show them what we saw, maybe they'll listen. Someone has to. Her voice faltered, betraying her youth, but her eyes blazed with determination. Reese leaned back in his chair, arms folded across his grease-streaked uniform. Or maybe they'll laugh and keep drinking their vintage wines while the swarm eats through colonies one by one. The Council only acts when it benefits them, and humans rarely make the ledger. I say we focus on warning our own people first. The debate cut into Ilera like a blade, for all of them spoke truths she could not dismiss. The Council's disdain was legendary. their deliberations glacial, yet bypassing them risked fracturing what fragile alliances humanity still clung to. Every choice carried weight, and hesitation could prove fatal. The ship's proximity alarm shrieked, silencing the conversation. Sarah's hands danced across the console as her voice trembled. Contact, not natural debris. Intercept vector. The main screen flared to life, revealing a dark shape emerging from the starfield. It moved with eerie precision, not drifting like a derelict, but gliding like a predator that had caught the scent of prey. Its form was alien, its surface shifting with mechanical ripples, as though it were alive. "Tell me that isn't what I think it is," Reese muttered, though his tone carried no hope. Alara's stomach nodded. The swarm scouts were real, and one had found them. Her voice sharpened with command. "Shields up. Power to the engines. We're not ready for a fight." The construct accelerated, arcs of energy crackling along its limbs. The ardent horizon shuddered as the first barrage grazed its shields, sparks dancing across the consoles. Reese swore under his breath, rushing to stabilize systems already strained by overwork. Evasive maneuvers. Alara barked. Sarah obeyed instantly, the ship rolling into a dive that sent Malik gripping the edge of his console. The construct mirrored their movements with chilling adaptability, each strike closer than the last. "Captain, we can't outrun it." Malik's voice was taut. This ship wasn't built for speed. "Then we outthink it." Alara snapped. Her eyes scanned the star chart, searching for opportunity. The dying star they had left behind flared on the periphery of the map, its unstable corona swelling. A reckless plan took shape. She turned to Sarah. "Bring us about, straight toward the star." The navigator hesitated. "The radiation will cook us alive. Not if we slingshot close enough to use its gravity and break away at the right moment. The construct might not survive the radiation storm." Reese grimaced. "Or neither will we. That reactor of ours is already one tantrum away from melting." Alara's tone softened, but only slightly. "Trust the ship. Trust each other." The order went out, and the ardent horizon plunged toward the searing brilliance. Heat alert screamed, the hull creaking under the strain. The construct pursued undeterred, its form cutting through the radiation with single-minded hunger. The star loomed vast and furious ahead, its surface roiling with firestorms at dwarf planets. At the final moment, Alara gave a command. "Now, Sarah, burn everything we've got." Engines roared as the ship slingshot around the star's gravity well. The sudden acceleration slammed the crew into their seats, blood rushing in their veins. Behind them, the construct faltered, its adaptive system struggling against the radiation surge. Sparks cascaded from its surface as it veered too close, swallowed in a flare that tore it apart in silence. The ardent horizon burst free of the star's pull, battered but intact. Cheers erupted across the bridge, ragged and breathless. Sarah laughed, relief breaking through her tension, while Reese muttered about the engines as though comforting a wounded animal. Malik allowed himself a thin smile, though his eyes still burned with unease. Alara exhaled slowly, the weight of command heavier than ever. They had survived, but survival was not victory. One construct destroyed meant nothing against the endless swarm they had glimpsed. And worse, if the swarm had scouts this far from their feeding grounds, then humanity had less time than she dared imagine. She looked at her crew, each face illuminated by the glow of battered consoles, each carrying exhaustion and resolve in equal measure. Their bond had been tested and held, but the trials ahead would demand far more. "We've seen what's coming," she said quietly, her voice carrying the gravity of their shared ordeal. "And now we know it's already here. We can't count on others to save us. The choice is ours, stand or be erased like the systems we saw on that station." The bridge fell silent once more, but this time it was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of a vow forming, unspoken yet understood. Beyond the viewport, the stars stretched infinite and cold, indifferent to the struggles of fragile beings. Yet aboard the ardent horizon, a flame burned brighter than any star could smother, a fragile, defiant fire that refused to fade. White heavy check mark that is Section 2, 1,000 words. It deepens a crew's bond under pressure, escalates the threat with the first encounter against a swarm scout, and ends with a renewed sense of defiance, setting the stage for the larger conflict. Would you like me to move on to Section 3 in the same style, or polish the first two sections together, so they flow seamlessly like a novel's opening? The fleet gathered in the shadow of a shattered asteroid belt, a coalition of ships that should never have fought side by side. Merchant freighters bristling with welded-on cannons floated beside sleek but outdated military cruisers, their hulls scarred from too many battles. Each vessel bore the same tension, humanity's last gamble against a storm that dwarfed them all. On the bridge of the ardent horizon, Illyra stood silent for a long moment, letting her eyes travel across the patchwork armada. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and wholly unprepared, yet she felt a strange pride stirring within her chest. This was humanity distilled, fragile, stubborn, and fiercely unwilling to bow. The machine swarm appeared without fanfare, a tide of blackened steel glimmering with cold red light. Their numbers blotted out constellations, their formation a mathematical lattice of inevitability. Malik's voice was grim as he read the sensor reports, his tone steady despite the weight of what they faced. They know we're here. No hesitation. They're coming straight for us. Illyra's hands curled around the railing. She had no illusions about what awaited them. Victory was not survival in the conventional sense. It was resistance, defiance, the refusal to let humanity's spark be extinguished without a fight. Her voice cut through the charged silence. They think we're predictable, that we'll scatter like insects. Show them they've underestimated us. The battle erupted in an instant. Plasma fire and kinetic rounds carved through the void, brilliant arcs of destruction flashing across the asteroid field. Human vessels scattered and regrouped in wild patterns, striking like wasps before darting back into cover. The machines pressed forward in perfect unison, their formations knitting together each gap as if choreographed by a single mind. Every human trick seemed to work only once before the enemy adapted, forcing new strategies to be invented on the spot. Sarah's voice cracked over the comms as she wrestled the horizon through a spiral of tumbling debris, each maneuver barely avoiding annihilation. Reese shouted curses from engineering as systems overheated, rerouted, and failed, his hands raw and bleeding as he forced the dying ship to hold together. Malik directed scattered units into converging strikes, his tactical brilliance sharpened by desperation, his cynicism burned away by the immediacy of survival. They were pushed to the edge of their limits, yet none faltered. Then came the opening Illyra had prayed for. In the storm of battle, fragments of data scrawled across their displays, the enemy's coordination pulsing outward from a central node buried within the swarm. It was not invulnerable, but its patterns reveal hesitation. When confronted with chaos it could not compute. A plan formed in her mind, reckless and certain in equal measure. If we cut out the heart, the swarm falters, Illyra said, her voice carrying over the fleet-wide channel. But we can't do it by calculation. We do it by making an impossible choice, the one no machine would dare predict. We are that chaos. The order galvanized them. Ships began executing maneuvers no tactician would approve, engines burning at suicidal vectors, weapons fired blind into fields of debris, feint so wild they bordered on madness. The machines struggled to respond, their patterns fraying under the onslaught of illogic. Amid the confusion, Illyra drove Horizon directly toward the node, its defenses flaring like a sun. "Captain, if we go in, we don't come out," Malik said quietly, not as a protest but as a truth laid bare. Illyra met his eyes. "Then we make sure it counts." Reese's rough voice cut in from engineering, hoarse but unwavering. "I'll keep her together as long as I can. Just don't waste her." Sarah's hand shook on the controls, tears streaking her face, but her voice was steady. "Plotting the course. If this is the end, then it's the one worth making." The ardent horizon plunged through the chaos, shields failing, hull splintering under relentless fire. Each impact rattled the crew to their bones, yet forward momentum carried them closer. Illyra's heart pounded, not with fear, but with clarity. She thought of Clyros, of miners who worked themselves to ruin just to survive another day, of every human colony told they were insignificant. They were all here with her now. They were bound into this moment. At the final barrier, she ordered the overload. The ship's reactor screamed as it built toward detonation, energy spiking into a crescendo. The horizon became a spear of burning light, hurtling into the node's core. For a heartbeat, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then the explosion tore through the void, a supernova defiance that shredded the node and rippled chaos through the swarm. The machine fleet faltered, its flawless unity shattering into disarray. Ships drifted, aimless, their coordination severed. Across the battlefield, the human armada rallied, striking down crippled enemies with renewed fury. What had begun as certain annihilation became survival, not because humanity was stronger, but because they had dared the impossible. When the light faded, only fragments of the ardent horizon remained, drifting embers in the silent dark. On every human channel, silence lingered before it gave way to ragged cheers, grief and triumph bound together. Illyria's sacrifice became more than loss. It was a signal, a testament that humanity could not be dismissed. In the weeks that followed, word spread across the colonies. The machines were not invincible. Humanity had proved it. Where once they were overlooked, they now became the symbol of resistance, their flame burning brighter for all to see. The great powers of the galaxy could no longer scoff at them. Fear mingled with respect, and respect grew into wary alliance. Yet amid the victories and the rebuilding, the crew's absence weighed heavy. Malik, Sarah, and Reese had not returned, but their names became etched into the hearts of those they had saved. Illyria's final words, captured in her last transmission, "We do not vanish. We endure," were repeated across outposts and settlements, whispered like a vow. Above a quiet colony world, a child looked up at the night sky, at the distant glimmer of stars. She pointed to a faint streak where the explosion had once burned bright, and her father told her the story of the ship that had lit the void. Humanity, he said, was fragile, but when pushed to the edge, it burned with fire that no darkness could consume. And in the silence between stars, that fire still burned, daring the galaxy to test again. This final section runs 1,000 words, delivering the climactic battle, Illyria's sacrifice, and humanity's emergence as a force defined not by power, but by resilience and defiance. It resolves the immediate conflict, yet leaves room for continuation, encouraging further reading. Would you like me now combine all 3 sections into a single seamless 3,000-word narrative, so you have the full story in one flow? The wreckage of the ardent horizon still drifted in the void, fragments of her hull glinting faintly in the starlight like the scattered bones of a titan. Weeks had passed since the explosion that had severed the machine swarm's perfect unity, yet echoes of that battle rippled across the galaxy. What had begun as whispers of defiance became a rallying cry, Illyria Vay's name spoken with reverence among colonies that had once resigned themselves to obscurity. Humanity, for the first time in centuries, was no longer overlooked. It was feared, respected, and, most dangerous of all, remembered. But memory alone could not sustain a war. The machines had retreated, yes, but not destroyed. Scouts brought reports of regrouping swarms beyond the edge of map space, their movements slower now, more cautious, as though studying the unpredictability that had undone them. They were learning, and humanity, bloodied and fractured, had little time to rebuild before the storm returned. It was in this fragile interlude that survivors gathered aboard the repurposed carrier Resolute Dawn, now the reluctant flagship of a nascent fleet. Among them stood Commander Joran Malik. Promoted not by ceremony but by necessity, his authority forged in fire rather than bestowed by council decree. His face was more gaunt than before, his eyes shadowed with grief, yet he carried himself with a new gravity. Illyria's sacrifice haunted him, but also bound him to a responsibility he could not escape. Sarimani had survived as well, pulled unconscious from a battered escape pod. The once bright spark of her optimism had dimmed, replaced by a sharper edge. She still spoke with the cadence of curiosity, but now it was laced with steel, her insights cutting deeper into the mysteries of the machine threat. Reese Calder, battered and scarred, had emerged alive too, though he walked with a permanent limp and bore burns that no med bay could erase. His humor remained intact, though grimmer now, every laugh carrying the echo of loss. Together, the 3 were remnants of a crew shattered yet not extinguished, each carrying Illyria's fire in their own way. The Council of Colonies had convened reluctantly, forced by survival to acknowledge the danger. Holographic images of alien representatives flickered alongside human leaders in the Resolute Dawn's war chamber, their voices cautious, calculating. Some saw opportunity in the machine's hesitation. Others whispered of retreat deeper into protected systems. Malik listened in silence until the noise threatened to drown reason, then cut through with the blunt certainty of someone who watched too many friends die. "We don't have time for politics," he said, his voice low but unyielding. "They're not gone. They're adapting. Every day we waste here is a day closer to extinction. Ilera bought us a chance, but chance is not survival. We need unity or we fall." The chamber quieted, tension stretching thin. Many did not trust humanity's sudden rise, fearing that their reckless defiance might drag others into ruin. Yet beneath their reluctance was fear, fear sharpened by the undeniable truth of the data Sarah displayed. Star systems erased in silent waves when machines still spread. Fear had a way of binding even the unwilling. Plans were laid not in grandeur, but in desperation. Supply lines had to be secured, colonies fortified, and alliances coaxed into existence. Malik found himself steering more than ships. He was steering a people, shaping them into something larger than survival. He hated the weight of it. Yet when he closed his eyes, he heard Ilera's final words, the vow to endure, and he knew retreat was no longer an option. One night, as the fleet drifted in uneasy rest, Sarah approached him on the command deck. Her voice was quiet but insistent. "They'll come again. Stronger. We can't just react. We need to strike first." Malik studied her. The young woman who had once filled silence with wonder now hardened into something sharper. He recognized in her the seed of what Ilera had been, the refusal to wait for fate's verdict. "Do you know what that means?" he asked. She met his gaze without flinching. "It means we stop being prey." Her words lingered long after she left, heavy with the promise of what lay ahead. Reese, overhearing, grunted from his usual post by the engineering displays. "She's right, you know. We can't keep patching holes forever. We either break their teeth, or we spend the rest of our lives running." His eyes softened for a moment, the humor falling away. Ilera didn't blow herself to pieces, so we could crawl back into holes. Malik nodded slowly, the decision crystallized within him. Humanity had taken its first step into the wider stage of the galaxy, not by being strongest, but by daring the impossible. To stop now would be to dishonor everything they had lost. The next day, as the fleet assembled, Malik stood before them, not as Ilera had, with fiery words, but with steady conviction. His message was simple, stripped of ornament. Humanity would not wait to be consumed. They would take the fight to the machines, not out of arrogance but out of necessity. And in doing so, they would prove once more that the smallest flame could still burn against the darkest night. The response was not thunderous applause, but something quieter, deeper, a ripple of resolve that passed from ship to ship, colony to colony. Fear remained, but it was tempered now by purpose. The spark had not died with Ilera. It had spread, far beyond the edge of charted space. The machines stirred, their cold calculations weaving around the anomaly they had encountered. Humanity's defiance was illogical, unpredictable, a flaw in the algorithms that guided them. And for the first time, the swarm hesitated, aware that what it faced was not simply another prey species, but something far more dangerous, a people who refused to vanish. As the Resolute Dawn led the fleet into the dark, Malik allowed himself a final glance at the stars. Somewhere out there, Ilera's light still lingered, a reminder that even in sacrifice there was victory. The war was far from over, but humanity had already won something greater than survival. They had claimed their place, not through dominance, but through the unyielding refusal to fade quietly into history. The stars awaited, and with them, the reckoning yet to come. Here's Section 4. 1,000 words it builds on the aftermath of Ilera's sacrifice, shows the surviving crew's evolution, and shifts the central conflict from survival to taking the offensive, ending on a satisfying note, while leaving space for continuation. Would you like me to now merge sections 1 to 4 into a complete, continuous story for 1,000 words, so you have the full narrative in one polished flow?